Well, that's a very pleasant introduction. I'm Brian. Also known as Brian Weston. I'm Director of Marketing for the Institute of Customer Service. So great to see you. Good morning. So what I'm going to do in the next few minutes is give you a kind of little tour of the state of customer satisfaction in the UK, and look at it by how it's changed over time. What are the things that's driving the change, how it performs by different sectors, and what organisations need to do about it. But before I do that, I'd just like to give you a little quiz to find out what you know about customer satisfaction, customer service. So just humour me with this. I'm interested in what you know, really. So if I was to ask you, which of these sectors scores the highest for customer satisfaction, which one do you think it would be? Any takers? A, was that heard? Or C? Yeah? It is C. They are the top two, actually, so A wasn't that far off. But retail food, and that is consistently the case as well. What about age groups? Which do you think is the age group with the highest customer satisfaction? Youngest or oldest, or in between? B? Okay. Anyone else? Any other different views on that? D. Well, whoever said D is correct. And it's interesting, actually, because it does go very clearly youngest, least satisfied on average, oldest, most satisfied, and it goes up like that. Okay, so we ask customers in the survey that we do how they value price versus service. And so we ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is cheapest possible but compromising customer service, and 10 is excellent service but you may need to pay a premium for it. Where would you score? And from that we get a view of who would prefer excellent service and price. So what proportion of people do you think would pay more for excellent service based on the survey that we've done? Any thoughts on that? D? Not quite that many, actually. C. But almost a quarter of people say they'd pay more for excellent service. There's a kind of similar number who always want the cheapest, and then most people in the middle want a balance of price and service. And finally, what proportion of people, customers, do you think, say that they had a problem with an organisation over the last 3 months? Which may or may not have led to a complaint, but they said they had a problem. Any ideas? A few different ones there. It was B, 13%. Okay, so that's just a little. Oh, I've got one more. This is the last one. So when somebody makes a complaint, what do you think is the most common reaction they say they get from an organisation when they speak to somebody? D. We'll see. Yeah. Actually, those two, very close, seemed uninterested and apologised. And I'll cover this later, there is a real big mix of different responses that people get, but those two are the most common ones. Okay, so a little bit about the Institute of Customer Service. Some of you may have heard of us, some of you may be in member organisations. We're an independent, not-for-profit body, and our purpose is to help organisations improve their customer service. And we do that through benchmarking and accreditation and training and research. We've got over 470 members, mainly from the private sector, also from the public sector. And we're also the secretariat to the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Customer Service, which was formed about a year ago. And this is a group of MPs who have recognised that customer service and how good UK organisations are at customer service has got a really important impact for the whole economy. So they've started to get interested in that. These are some of our members, and there is also a colleague of mine here, Susan, if you make yourself known. If you want to have a chat about the Institute, Susan, I'm sure will help you. And this is what we do. So we create a framework to help organisations improve their service through various different ways: research and insight, benchmarking, accreditation, training programs, and networking and best practice across lots of different sectors. and also raise the profile of customer service and build recognition for it across the wider economy and society. Now, the reason that we think customer service is really important, and people like MPs are starting to take notice, is that according to our research, over 70% of people who work in the UK deal with customers in their roles. They might not have customer service in their job title, but they are dealing with customers. And 78% of UK GDP comes from the service sector. And even in manufacturing, up to 20% of the revenues come from services. So it follows that how good we are at customer service as a country is going to have a big impact on how prosperous and successful we are as well, which is something that you don't often hear politicians talk about, and hopefully they will start to get more interested in. So what has customer service done, customer satisfaction done over the last few years? So we started doing the UK Customer Satisfaction Index in 2008. Is anybody familiar with that? No, so the UK Customer Satisfaction Index is a survey that the Institute does every 6 months. And we talked to a panel of 10,000 customers and we asked them to tell us about their experiences with organisations across 13 different sectors. So a customer would pick an organisation in telecoms or in retail that they've dealt with in the last 3 months and rate their experience with it. And so from that, we're able to build a picture of the state of customer satisfaction over time and in different sectors as well. And we've got another one of these coming out in middle of July, actually, so look out for that. It'll be on our website. But what we've seen is that from when we started this survey in 2008, customer satisfaction gradually and steadily rose up until 2013 when it peaked. And ever since then, it started to go down. And that's fairly common to all different sectors. Obviously, there is different performance of organisations within that. Some have gone up, some have gone down, many have stayed relatively stable. But there is an overall trend that in the last couple of years, customer satisfaction has gone down. Any ideas why that might be? Yeah, higher expectations. I think that's definitely a factor. Any other thoughts? What kind of things happen in your organisations over the economic downturn? Did you take more people on? Yeah, I mean many organisations, probably let people go. Maybe didn't resource their customer service to the same level, combined with rising customer expectations, combined with lots of different channels that people can use, including social media, so people can be more vocal if they're not satisfied. So there's a range of different things that perhaps have come together, which means there's more pressure now on organisations to achieve customer satisfaction. And it's harder to do. It's become harder to do. Customers are more demanding. Organisations are under pressure. So we think there's a new kind of environment for customer service. We're seeing falling satisfaction. Decline in trust is also a factor. So a lot of customers are less likely to give organisations the benefit of the doubt, especially in sectors like banking and utilities, but more broadly as well. There's a growing diversity of customer segments, who want different things and speak to organisations in different ways. And we're seeing this polarisation of prosperity. So, there are many customers who have been really hard hit by the recession and are looking absolutely for value everywhere, the cheapest. There's a lot of other customers who are relatively more affluent, and there's a lot of people in between. But one of the legacies of the recession is that most people have got a really strong focus on value, and that hasn't gone away. Customers have also got different attitudes to ethics and sustainability. I mean, these kind of things used to be not that prominent in buying decisions, and they are becoming more so. Customers increasingly are taking into account consciously or less consciously emotional factors when they buy. So they want more of a personal and emotional engagement with organisations and the people that they're speaking with. And of course, we've seen a wide variety of channels that customers are using, different combinations of channels, and organisations are trying to keep up. So if a customer might ring you one day, use social media the next, see you in person another, and knitting all those together into a coherent experience is quite challenging. So some of the factors behind the fall is we've seen certain measures fall more than others. So particularly things around speed and convenience and ease of doing business. These are things that really come under pressure and things where customer expectations have also risen. And in complaints, one of the dominant factors there is complaints to do with people, to do with staff. And what we see with complaints is that when customers complain about someone they've dealt with, it's very hard to turn that complaint round into a positive experience. They tend to be the things that annoy customers the most. And we've seen a growth in those over time as well. Now, there's strong evidence and consistent evidence of a link between customer service and business performance. This is something that it can be quite hard for organisations to prove in their own business. And one of the things that we do is we track levels of customer satisfaction in the UKCSI with the retail food sector, the Kantar data that tells you about sales growth and market share every 6 months. And so from that, we can see that the organisations that have got the highest customer satisfaction also achieve the highest sales growth and market share. And those with lower satisfaction fared less well for sales growth. So the companies that are winning out at the moment in the retail food sector are the likes of Aldi and Waitrose. Different types of organisation, perhaps different kinds of customers, but they're scoring highly for customer satisfaction, and they're also performing very well sales-wise. So we don't think that's a coincidence. There's a link between the two. Now, different sectors of the economy do perform differently, and this is fairly consistent as well. I don't know if you can see down the left-hand side, but we were talking about the retail sector earlier. So fairly consistently, the retail sectors are the highest for customer satisfaction. And I guess that's probably because they're very competitive, and it's quite straightforward to move your business from one store to another. There's a number of other sectors that are above average, so tourism, automotive, leisure, and banks and building societies also above average and have slightly increased actually in the last year or so. Not a huge increase, but they've stabilised and started to increase their performance. And then there's a number of sectors that are consistently below the average: transport, telecoms, public sector, and utilities. But utilities is quite an interesting sector because it's always, I think it's always been 13th out of 13 in this survey. Is there anyone from utility company here? No? Always been 13th out of 13. However, over the last year, of all the sectors, utilities is the one that has increased its performance. And it looks like there is a focus going on in many utility companies to try and improve. So it'll be interesting to see how that performs over time. Oops. Now, what we also see is strong links between levels of customer satisfaction and customers saying they'll remain a customer or they'll recommend. So it might be kind of obvious, but this is what the data tells us. So if customers score very highly for satisfaction, they're also more likely to say, yeah, I'll recommend or I'll remain a customer. But if you look at the way that chart goes up, the companies who benefit the most from that are the ones who score 9 or 10 out of 10. So to really get the benefit of customers saying, yeah, I'll stay with that company, I'll recommend that company, you really need to be scoring 9 or 10 out of 10. Once you get below 9, so 7 or 8, still pretty good, you might say, but the effect on customers' stated intentions and buying behaviour is less favourable than if you get a 9 or 10. So it really pays off to get a 9 or 10 out of 10. And it's similar with trust as well. So again, there's a strong relationship between levels of trust and levels of customer satisfaction. But to really benefit from high levels of trust, you've got to score really highly for customer satisfaction. Now, we also look at the relationship between employee engagement and buying behaviour and customer satisfaction. And they really link together. So we asked customers how engaged they thought employees were and what impact did that have on their buying behaviour. So if customers say they had a good experience with an employee and they thought that employee was really engaged, they're much more likely to buy again from that company. But if they have a bad experience, they're very strongly likely not to buy again, or even avoid the company or warn other people about the company. So customer satisfaction, employee engagement are kind of two sides of the same coin, if you like. Now, I showed earlier that the different sectors perform differently for customer satisfaction, and they also perform differently for complaints as well. So we track how many customers say they had a problem and how many of those actually reported that problem. So on average in the UK, as I showed earlier, just over 13% of people have a problem. But not everybody reports it. You can see there that just under about 25% of people don't report a problem. They say, yeah, I had a problem, but I didn't do anything about it. Now maybe they don't really care, maybe they're not interested, but a proportion of those will just go elsewhere without saying anything to the organisation. And it does vary quite strongly by different sectors. So in retail and food, for example, there's fewer problems, but there's probably fewer people who don't do anything about it. It's probably quite easy to do. You know, if you're not happy with your broccoli, you can just change the broccoli. It's quite a straightforward thing to do. But if you look at utilities, sort of slightly more average people have a problem, but most people do something about it. And I suppose you would, wouldn't you? If your gas is off or your water's off, you probably need to do something about it. But look at transport. Transport generates more problems for people than average, but there's a much higher proportion of people who don't do anything. We call these silent sufferers, people who have a problem but don't tell anybody. And in transport, there's quite a high proportion of those. So I mentioned earlier that we ask people if they have a problem or a complaint. What's the response that you get? And it's a really mixed set of responses that people say. So the ones in green are broadly positive responses that they get. So there's quite a few of those. And the ones in orange are more negative. And as I said earlier, the most common responses are seemed uninterested and apologised. And this is really important because what our research has shown on complaints is that a really strong driver on customer satisfaction with complaints is the reaction they get when they report it. So if the instinctive reaction of somebody is to be helpful and listen to it and try and help, that sets the tone for the way the customer thinks about the complaint. But if the initial reaction is not interested or even hostile, it becomes very difficult for an organisation to turn that complaint around, almost whatever they do. And even if a customer is satisfied with the outcome of the complaint, they're still not very happy with the overall complaint experience. And we've also looked at some of the drivers of complaints and satisfaction with complaints handling. So one aspect is that not everybody who has a problem reports it. So you might report volumes of complaints in your organisation, but are you actually capturing all the problems that customers have? Because a lot of people might not be telling you about them. Also, the nature of the problem and the level of annoyance is related. So some problems are easier to deal with than others. So if it's about replacing a product or a service, or it's about a product or service being late, those things can be fixed, and you can turn around a customer's perception. But if it's about people issues, it's really hard to fix those issues. Those issues tend to be more annoying for customers, and it's much harder to get a higher rating for a customer about the satisfaction with dealing with the problem. The reaction a customer gets when they report the complaint also sets the tone for the complaint. And there's a difference between customers' desired and actual time. So we found in our research that customers compare what time they would like a problem to be sorted by and when it was sorted. Most customers want a complaint or problems to be sorted out within 24 hours. But if an organisation does that, they don't particularly get a huge amount of credit than if they'd solved it in 2 or 3 days. But if they leave it longer, then the customer becomes progressively less satisfied. Following up complaints is really important as well. You might think you've solved it and resolved it, but does the customer think that? And the only way you can find out is by following up with them. And the word of mouth effect of complaints is also significant. If people have a bad experience with an organisation, they're likely to tell somebody about it. Likewise, if they have a good experience, they might tell someone. But I wouldn't bank on it. It's more likely if they have a bad experience that they'll tell someone than if they have a good experience, they will. So what are some of the characteristics of organisations that perform really strongly in customer satisfaction? I mean, I've not touched on the individual organisations here, but anybody got any thoughts or ideas about who are the strongest performers for customer service and customer satisfaction? John Lewis, yeah, they are consistently in the top 3. Any others? Amazon, yeah, also. Any other thoughts? First Direct, yeah, yeah, and they are kind of unusual because they're the only one of the banks in the top 10. They really stand above many of the others in the banking sector. And some of the others that have been very consistent over time are the likes of Boots and Marks and Spencer. So many of them in the retail sector, but not all. So some things that characterise those kinds of organisations is, I mean, they're good at dealing with complaints, but they're also good at preventing problems from occurring. They are very interested in customer insight, so they invest in customer insight. And they react to it as well. So they're able to be agile, respond quickly to customer needs. They also measure across their whole customer experience. So most organisations have got an overall measure. It might be satisfaction, it might be the Net Promoter Score. And those things are important so that everybody's got a clear measure and knows where the organisation is. But these organisations also measure in a quite a detailed way across all the important aspects of their customer experience, so they know exactly what's going on. They're also consistent across their channels. So it's very rare for an organisation to be really good on the phone and not very good on the website. They tend to be consistent across all the channels their customers use. And they also tend to benchmark both within and outside their own sector. So they're always looking for good practice outside their own sector to give ideas about how they can improve their experience. They have proactive employee engagement strategies, and typically they'll measure and monitor that. And they'll be active in co-creation with customers, so they'll involve customers directly in the way they design their products and services. And one of the really important things is there is a genuine strategic leadership commitment to customer service. So the leaders of these organisations say very clearly that customer service is an important objective for them, and that's followed through throughout the organisation. And customer service standards are reflected in training and processes and in the everyday transactions that occur. So those are some of the aspects of good practice that we see from our research in the organisations that are consistently strong for customer satisfaction. So that's it from me in terms of a kind of tour of the state of customer satisfaction in the UK. Well, thank you very much. Thank you.